Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Fourth episode of Dee Presley. Same article. We're trying to get through everything she said in November of 1978. And we're going to do that as soon as we've come back from this song. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. This is Glass Slippers You Left Behind.
I was sitting by your side in Lisa's room with your hand in mine when you whispered of December in a church you'd already seen. You spoke of rosebuds on my dress, gold sparks shining when I turned, and I felt like a storybook princess in a world I'd finally earned. You said you'd tell the world in Memphis, 2 weeks and you'd say my name. Talk to children in the quiet like a candle's gentle flame. But the morning stole you from me like a breath that slipped away, and the plans we made together all dissolved in a single day. Oh love, I'm walking through the shadows with the glass slippers you left behind. I'll reach for you in the silence, but only memory answers mine. A part of me went with you where the spirit and the body meet, and I'm learning how to live again with one heart broken, one still beating at your feet. You said life and death were woven, two threads in the same design, but I shook as I knelt beside you, calling your name like it still was mine. Lisa cried and ran from the doorway, her world falling like shattered glass, and I held the ache inside me as the moment turned and passed. You always said that love was like a spark God placed in every soul. Now I search for it in the darkness, trying to trust what I can't control. If distance closes in the ending, then maybe you're not far at all. Maybe you're just in the quiet where the spirit hears the call. Oh love, I'm walking through the shadows with the glass slippers you left behind. I reach for you in the silence, but only memory answers mine. A part of me went with you where the spirit and the body meet, and I'm learning how to live again with one heart broken, one still beating at your feet. I'll keep the dreams you gave me, no one can take them away, and I'll carry your light inside me till we meet again someday. For love is stronger than sorrow, and faith is stronger than fear, and I feel you still beside me, soft as a whisper in my ear.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Today we've got more echoes from Dee Presley. Hi Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate seeing you. But we're going to start with what's on the bookshelf. We look at a book that is not about Elvis and a book that is. They just both happen to be on my bookshelf. Now today's non-Elvis book, you know, a lot of times it's a book that I have not read yet. But in this case, I have read it. It just happens to be on the bookshelf behind me. And that is Bram Stoker's Dracula. And this was one of the, well, yeah, one of the very first vampire books. It's the one that really made the genre famous. And there's lots and lots of different copies of it out there. It's very interesting because it's written not as a book, but as a series of letters and other written paraphernalia that goes along with life. But it's not actually a story itself. There's like diary entries and things like that in here. And it's set up right around the turn of the 20th century. So there are no cell phones or electronic devices. You either write something down on a page. You might be able to use a typewriter. That would have been kind of a new invention, a new kind of thing that most people wouldn't have access to in their own home. And this whole book kind of reflects that whole period because of the way it's written. So if you've never actually read Dracula, it's a reading experience that goes way beyond what you think it would be if you've only seen the movies, even if you've seen the old 1930 movie. And today's Elvis book is Me and Elvis, which is Charlie Hodge's book by Charlie Hodge and Charles Goodman. So Charles is the guy who wrote it all on the pages, and Charlie's the guy who told all the stories. There's the pictures that Charlie's got on the back of the book. We can see the side here. Me and Elvis. Now, I think that's a play on, isn't Priscilla's book called Elvis and Me? I can't remember now. You guys tell me in the chat if that's right. But this book was printed in 1984, which is the year before Priscilla's book came out. Although everybody would have known it's in the works, and he may have known what the title was going to be. I think it is Elvis and Me, because it isn't Mike Edwards' book, Elvis and Priscilla and Me. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so this has a lot of Elvis stories in it. There are a couple or 3 different editions of this. I think this was one of the first ones. I think there was a hardback that went along with this, but from 84. But I think they reprinted it once. I'm not really sure. But in this one, it's got For Punkin, who I believe is maybe, I have no idea, 1984, Charlie Hodge. I have no idea who Punkin is. And there's this signature that says Charlie Hodge. And I kind of think it's a trick of the printing, but I guess it's possible that Charlie, because it's not to anyone, it's possible that Charlie sat and signed a bunch of them for somebody and then they resold them later. That happens a lot in this industry. But it wasn't sold as a signed book, so I don't think it's really Charlie's signature. I think it's just a replica. But that's quite a thing to be at a point in your life where you get to sell the replica of your signature or include it in a book. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. All right, let's flip on over to the reason that we're all here. Because we're in Memphis, it's 1978. Dee Stanley, or I don't think she went back to Stanley, so Dee Presley and the Stanley boys, they're involved in at least one article with the Star in 1978 in November. It's the only one we're looking at the moment. But how did Dee Presley feel about Linda Thompson? And how did she feel about Ginger Alden? Well, we might find out in this story today. This is Dee from an earlier time when she was married to the boy's father, Stanley. And we've looked at these certificates that show that there were really 5 Stanley boys, but 2 of them died after only a day on Earth each. And there's the family with the boys. Eventually, she ends up married to Vernon. That's a whole story and multi-episodes in itself that we haven't done yet, but we're going to get to. Then we've got Vernon and Dee in a newspaper somewhere. I don't actually have the article that goes with this picture. You got to wonder what it is. I think it might be the wedding? I don't know. I don't know if Vernon was wearing a mustache at the wedding. And Pat's asking whatever happened to the boy's father. He went on with his life, and he did interact with the boys to some extent. They have different accounts of it. He did come to an Elvis concert one time. Elvis was very happy to see him, treated him very well, brought him backstage. I don't know ultimately what happened to him, other than that he did pass away. I do have the records of where he is after he's passed away, where his tombstone is. But here's Dee and her 3 boys, probably about the time they moved into Graceland. They're right around that age. I think it's possible this is in Germany, right before she sends them back to a boarding school, and then her and Vernon eventually return, and then she retrieves them from the boarding school, I think after she and Vernon marry. Not exactly sure of that timeline. We'd have to nail it down together, but it's something like that. So this could be right before that. And this is the 3 boys with Lisa Marie when she can't be more than a month old, maybe 2 months. And Dee at some point I think this is the 1960s. Might be the early 70s, but I think it's middle-ish 1960s. And the chair that she's sitting in, I don't recognize the chair specifically, but that kind of chair, and not with that specific pattern of fabric, but that kind of fabric, like I recognize a million of those chairs. So they existed into the 70s and even into my memory when they would have been very old in the 1980s. And Pat's asking, why did she put the boys in boarding school? Basically, I think she was spending a lot of time with Vernon, and they needed this time in order for her to arrange for whatever she had to do to move back. Like, surely she had stuff, and when you have the disillusion of a relationship that's lasted a long time and it's got kids involved, I'm sure there's things that have to be done. And she sent the boys back, and that way they just weren't in the picture. I think she also did it so that her husband wouldn't have access to them. Therefore, they couldn't be used against her. They were too far away. They were now in another country, and his duties required him to be where he was, so he couldn't get back there. He couldn't really make any waves, even if he wanted to. I think that's part of it, but I don't really know. Again, we'd really have to go through that in a lot more detail. But the boys, it wasn't really a great experience for them from what they've talked about. And they were very young. I mean, it must have been very rough on them. And Pat says he wonders what Vernon saw in her. She was a very beautiful woman. And she was listening to Vernon when he needed it in a moment of weakness. He was very torn up about Gladys. And I'm sure there were a dozen different women that Vernon could have chosen from. But then again, he's in a foreign country. She's also from the South. She speaks in a way that she knows the kind of person that Vernon is because they're similar in that way. She has pain and heartache. He's got a lot of pain and heartache right then. I mean, there's a lot of things matched him up. And she was willing to do things that Vernon wanted to do. That's maybe another thing that was in on it. But again, we need to really go through that period. I got another video out there. If you haven't seen it, Dee Presley's Bible, where she did not write Elvis's name into the family section. She put the 3 boys in. She put Vernon. Elvis didn't make it. And that was sometime in the middle 1960s, probably. This is Dee with her son, Billy. Now, we've come to a part where they're talking about Linda Thompson entering the picture. And Pat says, so why did they split up? Why did Vernon and Dee split up? Or why did Dee and her husband split up? I've heard various things about her and her husband, so I don't really know. Difficult to be married to a military guy, and I don't think the military life, I think she was just tired of it. But hi, Lorna, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. But why did Dee and Vernon split? Again, we'd have to really take a look at that, but I believe there was a lot of fighting going on during that time, which I think was mostly screaming from Dee. I don't really know that. I'm sure that whether Vernon was raising his voice or not, he was doing his share of the fighting, because it seemed to be a very difficult and stressful situation. I think Dee was just a very difficult person to live with. I think she had a lot of her own emotional scars, and I think she spent her life trying to deal with those. And it just wasn't a pretty sight all the time. I think there's also some greed and, all of them follow, everybody that comes into Elvis's orbit seems to follow a similar path where at first they're very, very grateful to even be considered to be part of the group, let alone to receive any gifts or monetary rewards or ultimately to be put on the payroll. But as day by day goes by, or week by week, or month by month, they become entitled to things. And Dee was no different. She came in, she had nothing, and after a while, she felt that she deserved what was being freely given to her. She felt that that was her entitlement. Now, I'm sure she did things that were beneficial for the family, for the group. And so I'm not discounting what Dee may have contributed, but there becomes a disconnect in all of these people's minds between what they contribute and what they're owed or what they're entitled to, or even the structure under which they receive their compensation. It just seems to be a similar pattern. And Pat says that Dee doesn't seem like a nice person and that she looked like the devil. She definitely had those moments. I think she had a lot of hidden wounds and anger, and when you were near her, I think she just lashed out at you. But again, I wasn't there. This is just from what I read. Now, if I took everything that I read, then Aunt Delta is like the worst person ever. So I don't know. We got to always step back and try to understand who they are. But Dee really did a lot of, well, she said terrible things after Elvis was gone. And doing things like the seances, they're a stretch. It's a real stretch. And Lorna says she couldn't have been nice after saying that disgusting thing about Elvis and his mom. That's you're seeing Dee reflected coming out in those statements. And Marion's saying that's because that Pat may not like her because she knows these ugly things that Dee has said. That's right. If you've heard these things, they sour you on Dee, absolutely. And Pat says that it's all a lie, what she said, and that is true as well. I don't think she ever heard those things for real. I think she was put up to that. I think she grasped at that. I think that it was a reflection of her, and it was a very ugly, distorted reflection. And it's out there forever. But right now, we're in 1978, where she's kind of leading up to that. They're getting ready to write a book. That's what this whole thing is about, this article. And Dee says about Linda Thompson, she says, Elvis introduced me to Linda, and I liked her from the start. And Rick Stanley, her son, a year later, in the book, which is Elvis, We Love You Tender, Rick Stanley says she was a fantastic woman, meaning Linda, and still is, loved and respected by my family, by Scylla, by just about everybody. Linda stayed with Elvis even more than his own wife. Well, so far, I think we got to give this to Ricky. Linda was a fantastic woman and still is. I think that's probably true. And Pamela says that perhaps Dee was unhappy about not getting Elvis and she saw Vernon as second best. I've often wondered that. I'd like to see more about exactly how they met. We need to dig into that. We've got Dee's side of it so far. Something about getting invited over for dinner by Vernon, but I don't think that was quite the correct telling. And Elizabeth says that she doesn't like Dee either, but she does feel bad for that reason, and she was paid a lot by that magazine. That's true. There's a lot of money involved in these things. And it's the same money source that paid for Elvis What Happened. So that's important to remember too. There's this guy that's behind it all named Rupert, and he's back there like a puppet master playing all these people. Now these people are still responsible for what they did. But nothing would have got printed, at least in the Star magazine, without that guy. Hi, Francis. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Tammy says that we have Dee's side, but not Elvis's. That's true. But what I always think is that we all kind of know Elvis. We know him through his music. We know him through what he said in life. We know him through the magazine articles where he's quoted. And so we know when these things that are said that are not true, we can stack them up against those other things, and then we just know that they're not true. But no, he did not get to speak against any of these people who have decided to come out after he had passed away and say anything, good or bad. He doesn't have the ability to respond to any of it. And Pamela says that Dee seems as if she was a discontented person. I think you're nailing that on the head. That's definitely part of it. That I don't think there was anything that would ever satisfy something in Dee that, some hole that she needed to fill. And we've looked at a few reasons that, it would be understandable that somebody would have that kind of emptiness or need to be looking for something like that or have these kind of interpersonal issues. And Tammy says that Elvis wasn't a fan of Dee. I don't think I think she was very difficult to get along with. So, yeah. But Rick Stanley says that Linda was a fantastic woman. She still is. That sounds correct. Rick says that she's loved and respected by the Stanley family. Okay. I mean, okay. And by Priscilla. Does Priscilla, or did she ever love and respect Linda Thompson? I don't know. I don't know that Rick has the ability to speak for Priscilla in that case. We're going to have to bypass that one, Rick. And Rick says, and by just about everybody that she's loved and respected. I'll give him that. It's just about everybody. And Mark says, wasn't Linda Thompson Miss Tennessee? Yes, she was. Miss Tennessee Universe. At least according to Linda, from the sources we've looked at so far. And Francis says that she read more about why Dee didn't attend Vernon's funeral, and she said the family didn't like her and didn't want her there. Well, that's a shocker. Like, Vernon's family? I'm just kidding. But yeah, when you have these kind of interpersonal relationship problems, people may not want you at things like funerals. It may be very uncomfortable to go to them. And Elizabeth says that she thinks losing 2 children might be the reason why she was discontented. And it's not just the 2. There was another one with Vernon. So there's at least 3. And so there's reasons. And then her boys, they had some adjustment to adult life issues. And that could not have been easy on her either. And she claimed to be a devout Christian. And I can't sit here and say that she wasn't. I think she did struggle with her faith and her Christianity. And it was a burden and a comfort for her as well. And Pat says that after that garbage, Dee said that she could understand that about nobody wanting her to be at Vernon's funeral. That makes sense to me too. And Elizabeth says that Donna Presley, that Priscilla and Linda did not associate with each other. Well, Priscilla wouldn't let her ride on the plane for the funeral, so they were not friends. We've seen this in the media many times where they're trying to link Linda to Priscilla as a friend. And I think it's because people really liked Priscilla or really liked Linda. And therefore the press thought that would rub off on Priscilla. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know for sure. Hi, Tori. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Debbie's saying that they've been together in pictures. They have. They don't fight in public. They were at the funeral together, but they're not friends. And Marion says that losing 2 children must do something to you. I agree. And Pat says that that Gladys lost a child and she never turned out like this. That is true as well. And that's also a testament to how strong a person Gladys really was. And Gladys did have some support mechanisms like her older sister Lillian. I don't know what Dee's support systems were or if she, what kind of family life she had. But all that said, Gladys had a really rough life. So when you just stack them right up against each other like that, yeah, Dee... she didn't handle things as well as Gladys, I don't think. But that's hard to judge 2 people like that. And Debbie says that, yes, Gladys did lose a child in the 40s. And and then she'd lost one with Elvis's birth. And she'd experienced a lot of death outside of her own children. And Tammy's saying that these boys, the Stanley boys, were orphaned and Elvis saved them. I think there's some truth to that. I think he definitely gave them a great opportunity. I think each of them squandered that opportunity in their own way, but at the same time, it's their life. Who am I to say what they squandered or what they didn't squander? I just feel like there was a lot more opportunity there for them that they could have taken advantage of, that they didn't have to live the rough life that either their parents or Elvis's parents had to live. So they had a lot of, what I would think of as lucky breaks. I can't say that they didn't actually have a lot more breaks than I did growing up. If you grow up at a later time, just because of the technology and stuff, sometimes you could say maybe I lived better than, like if you got a refrigerator, you're living better than any king before the year 1900. They didn't have refrigerators or ice cubes or anything like that. But, they grew up in the 60s and I grew up in the later 80s, and I don't know, they might have had it a little bit better. And Frances says that she had a miscarriage a long time ago, and it's absolutely one of the hardest things to go through. Thank you for that, Frances. And Dee went through it 3 times at least. And Debbie's asking, is there a picture of both Priscilla and Linda together? I don't know of one right off the top of my head. We'd have to look around. I know for sure that the press noted many times they were together at the funeral. So you might think that there would be one from then. But now that you're mentioning it, I don't remember one off the top of my head. And Marion says that if she remembers right, the father drank too much sometimes of the 3 brothers. I think, a lot of them over there in Germany did. So, and I think I've read that as well. And Debbie says that when her father died, it was said that Gladys couldn't move. That's right. She got stuck in bed. She actually could not move her body, at least from the stories that were told. And then she lost her sister Retha in a stove explosion. That's true. Retha burned, and then she lived for a few terrible hours, and Gladys, I think, was with her. And then Gladys went to her friend's house, and she burst into tears. And her friend was actually a relative. It was Annie Presley, who was married to Noah Presley's son. Noah Presley is the uncle of Vernon, the brother of Jesse. And Marion's saying, sorry that Frances had to go through that experience. Me too. And Elizabeth's thanking Frances for telling us that, and that she's sorry as well. And Pat says that she's sorry too. And Marion says that Billy didn't talk much about his father. Was that in the book about faith? Is that the one that you're referencing? And Tori says that most women have a miscarriage and it's very traumatic. Well, I didn't know it was most. That's interesting. But I do know many, so yeah. And it's always very traumatic. Let me mention now, while we're at a short pause, that I will not be broadcasting tomorrow morning for the normal spiritual broadcast that we're in, trying to get through the impersonal life. I've got an appointment I've got to go to, so no 10 a.m. I think it's Eastern Daylight Time is what they call it now, EDT. So no 10 a.m. EDT show tomorrow. Just this one at this time. And now back to this one. So Rick Stanley saying about Linda Thompson that Linda stayed with Elvis even more than his own wife. I think we've got to give this one to Ricky again. He's nailed it. And it was a good thing because she was really good for the man. Everything I've ever heard agrees with that as well. Rick says, you know, Linda could have had what she wanted and pulled out long ago, but she hung in there because she cared. And let me tell you something, being Elvis's girlfriend is heavy. You do what he does, and that's it. She did it for 5 years. She traveled with him, took care of him, and a lot of credit has to go to that girl because she would have done anything for him. So Rick seemed to think a lot about Linda. And Dee says that Elvis was sick a lot during that time, and Linda would spend 24 hours a day with him, bathing him, combing his hair, and bringing his food. Dee says that I think Elvis liked her because she was religious, and Elvis himself never missed the Sunday morning gospel singers and read the Bible regularly. Linda and I got on well together. She was a lovely girl, just what Elvis needed at the time. And then in the book, We Love You Tender, Dee says that Linda had aspirations of her own. Linda wanted to break into the movie and television labyrinth of Hollywood. Elvis, of course, showered Linda with credit cards, cars, clothes, a home, anything else she may have wanted. Linda was certainly aware of the benefits afforded by her relationship with Elvis. But unlike scores of other girls who have known him, carnally or otherwise, her opportunism and knowledge of how he could open doors for her was always tempered by a very deep love that she developed for the man. This quote it's very Dee Presley. It is filled with what appears to be compliments, but then they twist somewhere in there and they become very not compliments. And Debbie says that Billy Stanley was on Kat's show last night. I noticed that. Talking about Elvis, and that she's going to have a part 2 today. Yeah, I don't think Kat likes me much. And Marion says that she heard an interview with Billy. And Tori says that she was like a mother to him in that way. That Linda was like a mother to him in that way. And that she thinks Linda loved Elvis. And Frances says that she thinks Elvis was happy with Linda for a long time. Yes, she does think it was hard to be Elvis's girlfriend due to his lifestyle. Yeah, it had to be really hard. It was definitely hard. And some say Linda was like Elvis's nurse. She cared a lot about him. And Frances says that she's seen interviews where Linda said she turned into a mother figure to him. And Debbie says that she's sorry to hear that Kat doesn't like me. It's no big deal. I mean, I'm not worried about it. It's just I get the very clear feeling that she does not care for me or my show. But that could just be me. Now, the other thing that Dee Presley said here, so she says Linda has aspirations of her own. That's not necessarily good or bad. And that Linda wanted to break into the movies and television. Well, we kind of already know that from our look at Linda. And that Elvis gave her a lot of gifts. I always find it interesting that the others in the inner circle always want to mention what gifts Elvis gave to others of the inner circle. Not just that he was generous and he gave gifts to a lot of people. They want to be very specific about what he gave to certain people. And it kind of lets you know that they were very attentive to where the gifts went, who was receiving them, what they got, what the value was compared to what they were receiving. And Francis says that, or wait, I already read that one. And Tori says that he used to call Linda mommy, didn't he? Well, they had a baby talk that they used. But Elvis used a baby talk with his own mother. And I think some of what he was looking for was comfort in a manner that reminded him of his mother. And that is probably not something Priscilla was, I think, capable of doing, even if she wanted to. She didn't really have that Gladys vibe. And Francis says that Elvis gave gifts to everyone and that he enjoyed giving to others. He sure did. And Elizabeth says that Linda did say that she had aspirations of her own. And Dee said, Linda was certainly aware of the benefits afforded by her relationship with Elvis. You know who else was certainly aware of their benefits afforded by her relationship to Elvis? I think that person might have been Dee Presley. I think that's how she was so certain that others were certainly aware of the benefits of being in a relationship of any kind with Elvis Presley. And then Dee says, but unlike scores of other girls, scores is a very large number. Now, I'm not saying that Elvis didn't reach a number that could be described as scores. But this is, I don't think this is a word that someone that loves someone else in their family would use to describe their love life. Scores of other girls, it's certainly demeaning to the other girls as well, who have known him, and then she says, carnally or otherwise. Well, I don't know why you've even got to put that in, and that's in her book. Now, to be fair, I got to be totally fair here. This is not a direct quote from Dee. This is something that Martin Torgoff, the guy who wrote in the book, wrote. These are words that he put down, and he did not describe them as a direct quote. However, they are in Dee's voice. You can hear Dee saying these things. These are worded in the way that Dee describes them. And the book is sold as told to Martin Torgoff. So I believe that makes this close enough to take it as a quote from Dee. It certainly, I think, exemplifies her feelings, if not the exact words she would have used. But and she certainly, she's approved this language. And so we get into this a lot with when the books get published and then they say they didn't have a chance to read them. And what it usually means is they didn't take the opportunity that was afforded to proofread and see if this was what they wanted. So I don't know whether she proofread this or not, or made an objection, but it says that scores of girls, carnally or otherwise, and that Linda's opportunism and knowledge of how he could open doors. So Linda's primary reason to be there was her opportunism, and the fact she knew Elvis could make those opportunities happen. And that's basically what Dee is, or Martin Torgoff, has hidden into these words. And that was tempered by a very deep love. But then that deep love is chipped away at by saying that she developed it for the man. So she didn't come into she came into the relationship with the intention of the opportunity, knowing there was an opportunity, and then fell in love while she was there, accidentally, I guess, or just because that's how great Elvis is. But She didn't enter the relationship with a deep love. That's something that was developed. At least that's the way that Dee or Martin, based on the way that Dee and the others told him, that's the way they see it. And Francis says that receiving a gift and comparing it to what he gave others rather than just appreciating the gift was selfish and disrespectful. I agree, but I think that is what we see going on there. And I think we see, it's not just Dee. Dee's not the first one that's told us things like this. They all mention everybody else's money. What the other people got. Elvis gave this person a truck. Elvis gave this person a bus. Elvis gave this other person a ring. I mean, they don't really need to say that unless they were there to witness it. And sometimes they're there, but really that's the other person's story, right? They received the gift. I'd rather hear their version of that. And Dee says that Linda, in her book, she says that Linda really loved Elvis. And that I think she would have loved him even if he hadn't been Elvis, the great star. I think the reason they split up is because Linda saw that they would never get married. And after all those years, she gave up hope. For someone who only knows what they see from the outside, really, because that's what Dee was, someone seeing it from the outside, that sounds completely reasonable to me and does pretty much look like what happened. And in this article from 1978, pre-book, leading up to the book, Dee says, but Linda got tired of living in a birdcage with a man with whom she could never be alone. He insisted that the bodyguard and the boys be with him all the time, and so his ladies hardly ever had a moment alone with him. Billy, Ricky, and the rest of them would work in 12-hour shifts. They would be there when he went to sleep and there when he woke. She makes it sound like they were sitting on the bed with them, but they were in a different room. They were outside. They were waiting to be called. They were aides. They weren't intrusive unless he wanted them to be intrusive. So that's kind of odd, but he did have them working in 12-hour shifts to be on duty 24 hours a day. And Debbie says, wasn't it because he had ginger that he left Linda? Well, he didn't leave Linda. Linda left him. He never left Linda. And Pat says that Elvis went through heck when he was married. He sure did. And after. Hi, Luann. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. You better get some coffee. So it's 6 a.m. where Luann is for the next couple of weeks until the time changes once again. And then we'll be back at her regular 7 a.m. time. And Frances says that she remembers seeing Elvis gave a car to someone, and one of his inner circle got upset and said, "Where's my new car?" Billy Smith said this on his channel. That's an issue for Elvis, right? Like, why did he have to buy so many cars at once? Because all these people would get upset that he didn't buy him a car. Why did he hand some people used cars from other people? Well, because he couldn't buy who could buy all these cars these people wanted? Had to trade some of them around. And Tori says that Linda wanted children, and said she would never bring children into Elvis's lifestyle. Elvis really wanted another child too. And that really makes you wonder that they both wanted that, and yet it didn't happen. So that makes you wonder if that was really an issue at the time, or that's something that Linda's reflected on later. And Pamela says that she thought Elvis had flown Ginger in and suggested that Linda go back to Memphis. Well, Linda was being very difficult at the time, and I really want to do a whole episode on this because I got a lot of information on it. But basically, Elvis did want to be with Ginger during that period because that was his new infatuation. And he did not want to hurt Linda, but he'd asked her to leave. And she decided she was going to stick it out because she knew what was going on, because she recognized these signs. And she ends up getting angry later on that day. Now Ginger is there. She's a floor below Linda in the hotel. Linda's down at the concert. There's a YouTuber named Patacrat. She was there at that concert and she talked to Linda, only she doesn't know it was Linda's last day. And Linda went up to Elvis and she got Patacrat a scarf and brought it back. And I think Patacrat still has, or Patricat. It's Patricat. I think she still has the scarf. And then Linda has a blowout later on with Elvis, and then she leaves. And that's it. They're done. That's the last one. And Elvis calls Ginger up from down below, where she'd been waiting and waiting. So he had flown Ginger in, and he had suggested Linda go back to Memphis, but he didn't tell Linda to dump him, or he didn't dump Linda. But Linda decided that was the last time, and that was it. So it's Linda that left, and she still continued to use Elvis's credit card. So left is a loose term at best. She left in the sense that her body was no longer around Elvis's body, but her finances were still deeply entwined. And Debbie says that Linda does talk about it. And Pat says that Elvis bought a lady a car that he just met. That's true. And not just once. And Tori says that Danny Smith said on his channel that Elvis didn't want any more children. Well, that's funny because he told a lot of other people that he did want other children. So Ed Parker would absolutely disagree with that and say that Elvis told him many times he wanted more children, and that he specifically wanted a son. Ed talks about it a lot. And Ed actually talked about it as an adult with an adult Elvis. So I don't think Danny's in a position to really state whether Elvis wanted more children or not. Now, Danny can believe that Elvis didn't, and Elvis may have said something about not wanting more, but Elvis was like that. He tried out different thoughts. I think he said them out loud to hear how they really sounded sometimes, to see what people would say, to try to test himself. Are my thoughts correct? And Marion is saying that Elvis didn't want Lisa to be an only child like he was. There was definitely that part of it when he was married. And Luann says she reckons that if Elvis had another child, they would have taken that child away from him if something by another relationship like Priscilla. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. That a child that Elvis loves to another who does not love Elvis is always going to be a weapon to be used against Elvis. And Francis says that Billy Smith and Joe Smith said Elvis's last concert scheduled before he passed away, that Elvis had another girl, not Ginger, to go on that concert. Alicia Kerwin was her name. Elvis had backups if Ginger didn't make it. Yes, that is true. Elvis had backup plans. He always had backup plans. And Debbie says that Joe Esposito said when he was with Ginger, he was still seeing other women. That's true. He was. And Tori says, do you think she felt betrayed, Linda, and that's why she used the credit cards? I'm sure that's part of it. I'm sure part of it's an entitlement thing. She felt entitled that she'd been with Elvis long enough that she'd earned it. You know, and I'm not saying she didn't earn it. And Elvis didn't say she didn't earn it. He allowed her to spend the money and he paid the bills. And then I think Vernon eventually shut the cards off and took care of the issue. Elvis had backup plans in place. It was going to get taken care of. It's just money to Elvis. It's no big deal. And it's what it took to, you know, calm her down and make her happy. And I don't think he did not object to that in any way. It's kind of the same way that he was with Priscilla. And Frances says that she thinks Elvis would have loved more kids, especially a son or a brother for Lisa Marie. Yeah, I think so. He probably vacillated between when he did and when he didn't want them. I mean, he's a human like anybody else. And there are moments when you're thinking, oh, I really wish I had this. And there are others when you're trying to tell yourself, it's best that I don't. It's best that I don't have this. And Debbie says that Priscilla was pregnant again after Lisa, but miscarried. And that Elvis was excited about it. And Pat's saying that she's heard that Priscilla got pregnant by Elvis twice and got an abortion. And can I say if that's true? I know that she asked for an abortion with Lisa. I don't know about a second pregnancy. In fact, these two right here, the Debbie and Pat, you're both telling me that for the first time. I've never heard that part about a second one or a miscarriage. Not saying that's not true. I'm just saying I don't remember that. Again, I've read so much stuff that sometimes I look back at these books and I'm like, oh, there it is. It's right there. And Pamela says that Priscilla's saying he didn't sleep with her since having Lisa. Yeah, well, now things don't line up. You're right, Pamela. And Francis is saying that, yes, Priscilla did miscarry, and Elvis was happy, but Priscilla did not want another child. Yeah. And Priscilla says that one of these stories, Pamela say that one of these stories makes Priscilla a liar. And that's, yeah, something has to make somebody a liar here. And Debbie saying she thinks she read it in Child Bride. And that's a book we'll get to on the bookshelf fairly soon. But we've reached the end of another hour. We still didn't get through this article. We've still got to get through what people think about Ginger and what happened. So guess we're going to a 5th video on this one. We're going to do that tomorrow. Remember, I don't have a first show tomorrow. Just one, just this one. So be here, 3 p.m. I think it's EDT. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your time and your thoughts and your conversation, your chats, your comments so much. And the likes and the subscribes. Be sure to hit the like button on the way out. I'm going to leave us with a song. And this song will be Sealed in Gold. You all keep on taking care of business.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called a close, no stage, no line. Slipped a ring on both her hands. No crowd to cheer, no wedding band. Just love, just spread, just time grown old. A vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold a whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, my love, my life. He wrote in chain a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole. The myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life. He wrote it in chain, a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole. The myth and memory, sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold. He wore a yellow shirt, black pants in the sun, rode horses through silence, then golf carts for fun. A ranch just 10 miles from the mansion's bright gate, where the myth met the morning and time learned to wait. George fixed the brickwork, the pipes in the ground, lit VP on shirt where no spotlight was found. Donna kept diaries, snapshots ahead of a father who labored, of a myth made by man. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place to be still when the world spun around. In the hands of the quiet, in the stitch of a scene, he carried the weight of a half-finished dream. The holster was worn, the leather was cracked, BP etched in thread, no glory attached. Mike shaped the saddle, the belt and the law, so Elvis could ride through a myth he adored. He didn't ask for gold,